Hi Flashes, this is Mrs. Reed. I'm going to teach you guys proportions and scale. So this was actually a 7th grade standard, so hopefully you guys remember how to do this, but here is a refresher. Remember solving proportions. A proportion is an equation which defines that the two given ratios are equivalent to each other. So when you go to find your value, a missing value in a proportion, there's a couple different ways you can do it. One way is to figure out if you were to go from 18 to 3, what are you multiplying or dividing by? Because whatever happens at the top is also going to happen at the bottom. Or the way that I do it so that I don't make a mistake by doing that is by just cross multiplying. So remember, when you cross multiply, you're cross multiplying your diagonals. So 18 times t would give us 18t, and that's going to equal the other diagonal. So 42 times 3 is 126. And then this is just a one-step equation, so to get 18 by itself, you just divide by that 18 on both sides, and 126 divided by 18 gives you t equals 7. Okay, so let's try another one. So again, cross multiply. So I usually always cross multiply whatever the variable is with first. So 10 times p is 10p. 16 times 45 is 720, and then just divide by that 10 on both sides and you get p is equal to 72. Alright, so I'm going to do one more with you guys and then I'll have you guys try the next 3 on your own. So again, cross multiply. 1.5 times b is 1.5b. And then 9 times 7 gives us 63. And then last step to get that variable by itself is to divide by that coefficient on both sides. So 63 divided by 1.5 gives us b equals 42. Okay, so now I want you guys to try D, E, and F on your own, so you can pause this video and then press play when you are ready to get the answers. Okay, so you guys should be done with D, E, and F, so there is my work for you guys to double check it. So remember, with proportions, make sure you guys are showing all work and showing your proper algebraic steps. So D was 270, E was 3, and F was 25. So if you made a mistake, make sure you go back and fix it and figure out where your mistake was so that hopefully you don't make that mistake again in the future. Okay? So the reason why we did this introduction on proportion is because when we start talking about scales, we have to set up a proportion to figure out the missing value in our scale. So this is like talking about blueprints. Like obviously whenever you build a house, they have to have a blueprint and they have a scale to help them figure out what the actual dimensions are going to be on the actual house. Okay? So the scale is the ratio of the length in a drawing or a model to the length of the real thing. So kind of just like I talked about with the house. Okay. Okay. So we are going to be finding the actual distance. So when you set up a proportion, it's always going to be the model or the scale drawing over the actual. So I'll just put the model over the actual. Okay. So that's how you want to set up your proportions. So in this example, when they said a map has a scale of 1 inch to 40 miles, 1 inch is talking about the model, and then 40 miles is talking about the actual. So on this map, every inch represents 40 miles. So if they were giving us 5 inches, we just need to find the actual distance. So I tell my students all the time, whatever the scale is, so whatever scale they give you, that is your first fraction in your proportion. So it's the 1 inch over the 40 miles. And if you guys remember, when you go to set up your second fraction, everything has to be lined up in the proportion. So if your numerator was talking about inches, your numerator over here better be talking about inches. And if your denominator is talking about miles, your denominator also has to be talking about miles over here as well. Okay? So they gave us 5 inches. So 5 inches was talking about the model. And then we are trying to find the actual distance. Okay? So again, just solve it, or if you can figure out the pattern, you can do it that way as well. So I can do the pattern here. So I know that 1 times 5 gives me 5. So whatever I do to the top, I have to do it to the bottom. So 40 times 5 is going to give me x equals 200 miles. Okay. If you do it this way, just make sure that your teacher is okay with it. I know for my students, I'm okay with it as long as they show me their work, so how they got 200. So as long as they put the times 5, I am okay with it. Alright, so next one, so same thing, you always start with the scale that they give you, so that 1 inch over 40 miles. And then if on the map was 18 inches, we need to figure out the actual. So again, you can just take that 1 times the 18 to give you 18. So whatever you do to the top, you got to do it to the bottom. So 40 times 18 is going to give us 720 miles. Alright, so next one, 32 inches, so same thing, start with the scale, that was 1 inch to 40 miles, and then if we have 32 inches on the model, how many miles would that be? Well again, you can use the pattern or you can cross multiply and divide. I'm just going to keep using the pattern because it's a little bit easier. So 1 times 32 would give us 32, so then 40 times 32 would give us x is equal to 1,280 miles. Okay, and then the last one, this is 1 foot, so we have to be careful with this because, like I said, up here, if your numerator is talking about inches, then your numerator over here on the other side also needs to be talking about inches, but they gave us 1 foot. So you first need to figure out how many inches are in a foot because that's the number that needs to go down here in our fraction. Because again, 1 was talking about inches, so our numerator over here also has to be talking about inches. So how many inches are in a foot? There are 12 inches in a foot. Okay, and then again, just solve it. So 1 times 12 gives us 12. So 40 times 12 gives us 480. Alright, so let's move on to some word problems with scale. So a model of a dinosaur skeleton was made using a scale of 1 inch to 15 inches in a museum. If the size of the dinosaur's tail in the model is 8 inches, find the actual length of the dinosaur's tail. Okay? So again, whatever the scale is, so in this case it's 1 inches to 15 inches, that is going to be the first fraction in your proportion. Okay? Then you just need to figure out the other number, is that talking about the model or is that talking about the actual? Because if you guys remember, our fraction is going to be made up of the model over the actual. So they told us that this 8 inches was representing the model. So our model goes in the numerator, so this 8 inches needs to go in the numerator, and then we're trying to figure out the actual, which is the number that goes on bottom. So again, we can go ahead and solve it. So you can cross multiply or figure out the pattern. So 1 times 8 gives us 8. So whatever you do to the top, do it to the bottom. So 15 times 8 is going to give us x equals 120 inches. Alright, the next one, a botany student drew a sketch of a birch tree using a scale of 1 inch to 2 meters. Find the actual height of the tree if it measures 3 inches in the sketch. Okay, so same thing, start with your scale. So we have 1 inch over 2 meters. And then they told us in the drawing it was 3 inches, and we're trying to find the actual. So 3 is the model, so that's the numerator number. And if we're trying to find the actual, that means that's the number that goes on bottom. All right, so again, cross multiply and divide, or find the pattern and just show the operation that you're doing. So 1 times 3 gives us 3. So then 2 times 3 would give us x equals 6 meters. All right, next one. A man is 6 feet tall. A statue is being created in his honor. Find the height of the statue if the scale used is 4 meters to 1 foot. Okay. So again, that is your scale. So that's what you are writing down first in your proportion. So we have the 4 meters to 1 foot. You can also flip-flop these numbers because, as we know, proportions always line up. So just make sure that your numbers line up in your second fraction if you do flip-flop them. So then the height of the statue, so that is the actual. So if it's talking about 6 feet, and this 4 was talking about meters, and this one was talking about the foot, you always want to make sure that your units line up. So since the 6 was talking about feet and our 1 was talking about feet, then we need to make sure that this 6 comes over here on the side. Okay, and then we're trying to find x up there at the top. Okay. So let's go ahead and solve it. So again, you can cross multiply. So this would be 1 times 6 would give us 6. So then whatever you do to the bottom, you can do it to the top. So then 4 times 6 would give us 24. All right, so you guys try the next one. So go ahead and pause the video and try this one on your own, and then press play to see if you did it correctly. All right, so this one, it said that the scale was 4 centimeters to 25 miles. So that should have been your first fraction in your proportion. Then the distance between them was 160 centimeters, so you're trying to figure out how many miles are they apart, and talking about the actual miles. So this 160 should have gone on top, and your x should have gone on bottom. So again, you can cross multiply if you want, or just figure out the pattern. So let's say I cross multiply on this one. So 4 times x is 4x. 25 times 160 is 4,000. And then last step is to divide by that 4 on both sides, and 4,000 divided by 4 would give us x equals 1,000 miles. All right, last one here. So on a map, 1/4 inch represents 12 miles. The distance between 2 cities on the map is 3 1/4 inches. What's the actual distance in miles between the 2 cities? Okay. So again, always start with the scale as your first proportion. So we have 1/4 inch represents 12 miles. And if the 2 cities on the map are 3 1/4 inches, and we're trying to find the actual, that 3 1/4 goes on top, actual goes on the bottom, and then we can go ahead and solve it. So 1/4 times x is 1/4 x. 12 times 3 1/4 is 39. And then you could divide by 1/4 on both sides, or just multiply by the reciprocal. So that's the same thing as just multiplying by 4. So 39 times 4 is 156 miles. So again, hopefully that was just a recap of what you guys learned last year in 7th grade. And if you guys have any questions, just let your teacher know.